And I know a lot of you have been with me since the beginning, and it's hard to believe. I think this is maybe the fourth year coming up that I've been doing YouTube, and I appreciate everybody who comes by the channel and watches. And I've seen a lot of growth, and I made a lot of mistakes, and people have helped me identify those mistakes, and so I always try to make better and better content every time. So I appreciate you sticking with me, and those of you who are new, I'm just going to kind of give you kind of a rundown of a few different things, and so I feel like I at least owe you who I am and what's going on here. I have a love-hate relationship with winter. It seems like the older I get, the colder I am when I go outside. I don't know why the cold didn't used to bother me very much when I was a kid, but now it just seems like it's a lot of times it's unbearable. But I do like the fact that it slows down, especially after the holidays. It gives me a little bit more time to kind of reflect and rewind and spend some time working on some things that I didn't get a chance to do during the summer when I was really busy. I said I wouldn't trade this life for pretty much anything. I have lived here my entire life, and I'm going to be 54 this coming year. So long time. I mean, I was in the military for 25 and a half years, but I guess this was still home. Primarily heat with wood, and we have to have generators. So I guess you could say we live sometimes off grid. The truth is, though, this house didn't even have electricity up here until 1968, and everything was run by gas or oil, like lamp oil. There was a McCormick gas engine that used to be down back that I don't know if it was 3 or 5 horsepower that would pump water up from the well, but that would freeze up in the winter, so you'd have to go down and bust. They'd have to go down and bust, through the ice to get the water out and carry it up in buckets. We've had indoor plumbing here since the 60s, especially since 1968 when power came up. A lot of things changed for the better then, but there was a three-holer out back, and I don't know why they had three-holers. I would think you wouldn't want to go out there and hold hands with two other people while you're doing your business, but it seems like the norm in the old farmhouses up here in Maine were three-holers, and I don't understand the logic behind that. But some of the old outhouses actually had a smaller one for little kids, would think. But anyway, I can't imagine going out there in the middle of the winter, especially if you're sick and freezing. And that's probably why a lot of people got really sick and didn't make it through the winter. Typically, the walls of the old three-holers or whatever were just wallpapered with like old calendar art. I remember asking Dad about it, and he just said, they were all like that when he was growing up, and in theirs too. See the tin ceiling. This house was built 1840, and then 1890s there were some additions made, and it was Victorianized with this ceiling, and then there was a dormer put on the front, and a few other things to make it look Victorian. But it still has a lot of the original latches. Still a lot of them are a little bit more intricate than others, and the reason you see those bolt heads sticking through is because the doors aren't very thick, and the hardware for the latches ended up just wearing the wood out. So until I come up with a better solution, there's little lock nuts on there, but that's how these doors open. Believe it or not, there's a company in Massachusetts that's still in business today that still makes these old latches. Build them in the exact same style as the originals. And then you get Victorian knobs like this, different types. So you can see the key down here. But there's Victorian ceiling here too. And what you see behind you is when the house was moved from up there, it had a big center chimney with the brick ovens and the bread warmers and the whole deal. When they moved it, they took the chimney down and made the foundation out of it. And then they just made this little one center chimney go up through. And then since then, it's been basically put back to original. And so that's why you see this. It's just the chimney got moved back a little bit. But it's here in the kitchen. We used to have the cook stove in here, but the real estate that it took up, this kitchen addition, isn't super big. The kitchen addition isn't super big, so we needed the floor space, and so the cook stove is out, but consequently this room gets a little cold. Primarily with wood. The most I've gotten in here is 11 cord. There's probably, I'd say 8.5 right now. I've already used most of a cord, so 9 cord makes me feel comfortable. I don't usually use 9 cord of wood. I probably could get by with 7, but you just never know. Like if the winter comes early or if the spring comes late, then you gotta have extra wood. Projects I had to do not too long ago was I had to basically float this whole woodshed, and I dug it all down and poured a new footing down there, and then I put a new sill in, and I redid that much of it for now. Spring, I'm going to put at least one window in there, because when you close the sliding door, it gets really dark in here. So there's actually not a single window in this part of the woodshed. The way this was constructed, you can see they basically just took some logs and they cut them down and flattened off one section of it and put the nails to it. Some people will say that they used an adze to do this, but they really didn't. They just took an axe, and what a good axeman would do is he would just hit a chop every 1.5 feet or so, and then he would just work sideways and take the bark off. Now, I'm not saying that they didn't use adze, but typically the general Maine farmer didn't have an adze. He just had a really good axe, and probably a double-sided axe. Roof is what they call a purlin. So you got these rafters, they're probably 8x8s. They would notch out a section and then put these beams across about 10 or 12 feet, and then they would board it this way. And that whole construction, except post and beam still does it this way, but as far as mainframe like housing, they just use regular rafters now. And you can see even the ridgepole is just a log with bark on it still. One of the projects I had to do not too long ago was I had to basically float this whole woodshed, and I dug it all down and poured a new footing down there, and then I put a new sill in, and I redid that much of it for now. My dad's old cream separator here. Basically, you'd pour the milk in and then turn the crank, and you get skim milk on one side and cream out the other. The barn was built in 1938, and you can see that it's still kind of post and beam, but then when you look at the rafters, you can see that it's not post and beam up there. So they had changed. And what's interesting is in 1938, they were basically on the cusp of changing from this kind of barn into the newer ones with the cement floors and the milk houses and the whole deal. The guy was really old when he rebuilt this barn, so he pretty much put it back the way it was. But he did update the cellar of the house to make the milk house down there. So they'd cart the milk downstairs, and then they'd process it down there. I modified this barn a few times myself. Like, took out a lot of the bays here that I used to keep the animals in to make a workshop. The reason I did that was just because animals on the wood floor, the wood floor was rotten from 100 years of animals doing their business on it. So I tore the floor out, and then I needed a place for my wood shop. I still put the hay upstairs, and this is about as full as it's been ever. I mean, I have had some overflow on the other side once or twice, but this is as full as it gets. You can see there's some swings that hang there. There's still some ropes down there too. And then up here is the hay fork, which you can see. Here's the ropes. And then the hay fork is up there. And it was made for hay bales, not loose hay. The way it was built was different. A lot of the stuff in here is new, but I do still have a bunch of antiques that are kind of inherent with the farm. And I don't know any are original. Family's been in this town since at least 1904, and they came from the surrounding towns before that. And some of my relatives, depending on which side of the family it is, came from Quebec, Canada. So I have a lot of French heritage and some English heritage. Some of my relatives came from England, and so I've been able to trace it all the way back. And And on my grandmother's side, my paternal grandmother's side, they were on like the fourth or fifth ship that came from England. But especially in the 20th century, my maternal grandparents, they all came from Quebec to come down here and work in the mills. I come from a long line of people in the military. I can trace everybody in my immediate family back to the Civil War pretty easily. So it's basically every generation somebody's been in the military. And to continue that, my two oldest boys are in the Army. Tried to tell them to join the Air Force like me, but they're in the Army. One is infantry, but he's going to go into aviation. He's doing ROTC. And my oldest son is we call it a vertical construction, I guess. He's a carpenter, which is a good trade to have, especially you can take that with you on the outside. But aviation is too, if you're going to fly helicopters. I joined when I was 19 years old. I did 1 year of college, joined the National Guard, finished up my college, and that's how I got my college paid for. But I did stay in until 2017, so that was a total of almost 26 years, 25 and a half years when I got done. And I did have a couple of different lives in the military. I was electronics, and I was an engineer. I was an electronics installer. I installed everything on military bases that had to do with communications, fiber optics, weather systems, radar systems, radios, telephones, you name it. If it had a wire going to it or if it didn't have a wire going to it, I designed it and or installed it. And I also, at some point when one of my enlistments ran up, I joined the Navy Reserve up in Brunswick because it seemed like something I was interested in. So I was a heavy equipment operator with the Seabees for a couple of years. And then they were going to close Brunswick, and I went back to the Air National Guard and went there full time. So I do have a full time military background, and so I retired, and here I am. Anyway, my great uncle and great aunt bought this farm in 1941, in the summer of 1941, and they had big dreams to make it a farm, but the world ended up going to war, and he was too old to join the military, but he did work in the shipyard down in Portland as a welder. So he worked on ships. So they did farm a little bit, but nothing serious. And this hasn't really been a full-time farm per se. Even now, even though I've got animals, I mean, there's been animals here since 1840 when they built it. There's always been animals here. But the last, I would say, full-time dairy operation here ceased to exist around 1940 when my great aunt and uncle bought it, and it's just been, some livestock, some self-sustaining homestead livestock that have been here since. And it was getting really overgrown when I bought it, so I spent a lot of time and effort with the kids, and we cleared all the land back, and now it's starting to produce pretty well. But in a nutshell, I guess that's me. And so I'm going to kind of talk to you about different things while I get the morning routine done, and you're welcome to follow me around. It's pretty cold out today, and it's hard on equipment, it's hard on animals, it's hard on me. The grain I use for the chickens, it's milled in Vermont. So where is it grown? I'm not sure. I'm sure a lot of it probably comes from out west, with either the United States or Canada. We do have some grain farms up in New England, believe it or not. And so it doesn't really say where the grain itself has come from, but it's quality feed, and it's milled in Vermont. So I know it's fresh. I know it's supporting a local company, and it's kind of like what I call top tier grain. Lay down. 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 Wait. Wait.